Woo, baby. It is time for your Wednesday Q&A. And man, two things. So one, just last night I released the Star Wars update for October. And, I spent the last 10, 15 minutes complaining about the last couple of trailers for The Last Jedi coming out in December. And for Star Wars The Last Jedi, in case you need that clarification. Which I don't imagine my patrons do, but anyway, maybe you do. So, all right. Tonight, they just came out with what I'm going to guess is going to be like a TV spot. It was called The Last Jedi Awake, and it's a trailer. And this was a trailer. This is perfect. I didn't feel like there was any subterfuge, nothing crazy going on. You got ideas of, Snoke talks a little bit longer in it and explain and at least gives like a hint of what the hell's going on. And it opens up amazingly with like Luke walking, or going into the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon and turning shit on. I mean, like that was right in the feels. You know what I mean? It's like, yes. It's like, now that's a trailer. Why didn't you fucking really like that was 10 times better than the trailer they released on October 9th. I don't know what the fuck they were. Well, whatever. I'm not in charge of Star Wars because, boy, if I was, there'd be a whole lot more nudity. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, kids would not be lining up for this one. But I was very impressed by that trailer. Thank you, Lucasfilm, for at least restoring a little bit of confidence in me for what you can do. So anyway, there are some other things that I just found out today, say from comic books that came out today and whatever else that that might have to do with a character named Quinlan Vos that I found very interesting. And it's like, oh, okay, now you're picking up a little bit, but what the fuck were you doing for the past few months? Anyway, enough of that. Let's talk about, the second thing I wanted to tell you about is this is the first time, and so we'll see how this goes. This is the first time that I'm actually recording a podcast. Now I'm in studio. I'm in the BDSM studio. And of course it's Brian's Dungeon of Sex and Magic, but I'm recording on my Asus ZenBook 3, which I reviewed in this past week's episode 249 of the Sovereign Tech Prime episode. And yeah, that so far seems to be doing okay. We're only a couple minutes in and it's rolling. And I tested the sound at least and it sounded good. So, but one of the downsides, potential downsides for people that I talked about on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode was that, it only has one port. It has one USB-C port, and that port is used to charge things. Like, it's not even like an extra port where you can, plug stuff in while you're still charging the computer. I mean, the computer, the laptop has tremendous battery life, especially for its size. But yeah, that's kind of a problem. So anyway, I went on, I went online and I found a adapter that is USB-C. And it has a RJ45. It's pretty small, but it has two USB stock USB 3.0 A type A, right, adapters on it. It has a pass-through power of USB-C on it. It has a micro SD, or it has an SD card reader, and it has RJ45. It has Ethernet on the end of it. And so all I got to do is plug that in, and then I can plug in the computer and I can plug in all the devices. So that's fine, especially if it's like an in-studio thing. I mean, that's okay. And it's easy enough. It really is easy enough to throw in a bag. It's not like dongle hell in that I have to have like 4 different dongles to connect devices. Like I can just connect every device to the one dongle. So not bad. I can accept that, especially since most of the time, the dongle's not a concern and it's not the way that I'm using the device at all. So anyway, still totally loving the Asus ZenBook 3. I mean, every day I use it. It's so, I was thinking about this. We're going to get in. We got some great questions to get into. Like earlier. So I've had to do a ton of traveling lately, just a ton, and it's not over yet. There's more traveling to come. And that's one of the things I really wanted, like a much smaller computer, and a computer that's easily, stowable and tough, can be a little rough and tumble, and, but I can still get the business done. And that's part of the reason I chose the ZenBook 3, because it is incredibly tough. It's solid, it's all aluminum and, has the grill glass, all that good stuff. Even though it's not a touchscreen, and I didn't want a touchscreen. So, but I was thinking about it, and I'm like, what I have this one leather bag. I don't know what the exact measurements are, but it's like at the maximum of what's carry-on for being on a plane. And it's a leather duffel bag. And, like, I feel like I live out of this thing. I mean, and it's kind of easy to do, when you wear all black clothes, right? Because, nobody knows if you're wearing the same shirt twice, if you always wear the same fucking colored shirt, right? But, I mean, I'm not saying I do that, but, it's a possibility if one needed to. So, but I feel like I just live out of this bag. And what's amazing is just how well I can. I mean, yeah, I've got all this stuff and all these books and everything that you can see behind me, if you watch a video of me doing any work from my studio. But, pretty much from what I need, and like what actually means anything when I'm quote unquote in action, it all fits in that bag. And now, with this little, with the ZenBook 3, with this little computer, you just slap the thing in there. I mean, and it takes up, practically no weight. I have jeans that weigh more than this computer, and, and it takes up almost no space. I mean, usually I have a gym bag or a backpack or something that I'll carry as well, and not just the duffel bag. But now I don't even need the gym bag. I'll just I can just toss everything right into the duffel bag, and that's really incredible just how much you can get away with. I mean, I've had, throughout my entire life, pretty much, I've kind of had this sort of background, ethos attitude of, you don't even know that I'm there. Like, like if I'm visiting somebody or something like that, like I mean, I'm just incredibly self-sufficient, and you don't even, I leave the place, you wouldn't even know that I'm there. And honestly, like if you didn't want to know that I was there, like you really didn't, like, you're busy or something like that. Like I can be, I'm never bored. I always have plenty to do, and I can do it all very quietly if need be and everything, I guess that's my passion for the ninja. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's so easy today, really, and I'm not just talking about minimalism, and I'm not praising minimalism either. But I'm just saying that it's very easy to have like your whole world in a duffel bag now. It's nothing less than remarkable, that you can do that. So even when you're a big guy like me, and I'm a big guy, and well, anyway, that's enough of that. We have questions to get into, goddammit. But something that was very exciting that was announced today, and of course I'm recording this on November 1st, 2017. Signal, or Open Whisper Systems, of course, the creators of Signal, they announced today that they were releasing a full-on desktop app. And not only that, now I'll talk about this on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode as well, because this is important information, so I want to make sure everybody can hear about it. But not only that, but they deprecated the Chrome app, because what it was for so long was a Chrome app, and everybody, myself included, were like, well, what the fuck? Why would you make it a Chrome app? It's Google, we're trying to talk about privacy here. And you could say, well, they made it an Android app. Well, yeah, I understand that, but like that's very different, because we're talking about platforms here. As to where with browsers or with operating systems, you don't need to attach it to, one of the greatest pieces of spyware ever devised, that being, Google Chrome. But they deprecated it from the Chrome Web Store, which that's a problem too. In fact, I'll tell you, speaking of the ZenBook 3, there was a part of me that was half tempted, just because it would be, a computer that I could stow and go. There was a part of me that was like, yeah, maybe I'll get one of those like Asus Flipbooks, because they can run all the Android apps and everything. It'd be a Chromebook, right? And I mean, I used to be a big fan of Chromebooks, actually. But I decided against it just because, there's some software that I'd want to run that Chromebooks just can't do, nor could Android. And it's funny, like, I mean, one of the ways that I was selling myself, it's like, well, I could still have Signal on it. That'll be fine. But now, unless you're using like an older Chrome APK, you can't do it. And what's also funny is that you could say, well, yeah, you could just use the, or not APK, well, I guess you could still run it with the Android app, right? Okay, so never mind. It's not a problem. But if you're not using the Android app, if you're not using that solution on whatever, platform you happen to be on, I mean, that has Google Chrome, well, you're not screwed. Bottom line, I guess maybe that's it. Maybe that's why they felt okay with doing it, because Chromebooks weren't left in the dust, because now they can use Android apps. whatever. Anyway, it's cool. It's available for Linux. Great Linux instructions actually for installing it. It's available for obviously Mac, Windows, and in fact, just as I was just speaking, in fact, it's what reminded me to talk about it. Just as I was talking now, it asked to restart. I was like, oh wow, cool, and because it wanted to update, and it did an auto update. Nice. Great work, Open Whisper Systems, and I mean that. So Signal, I mean, this is something that lends it to being, far more serious of a platform than just, the most secure messenger that we have, available to the masses, shall we say. So anyway, that's cool. I'll be talking about that more on the Sovereign Tech Prime episode because, again, I think that's very exciting news. It's right now, I mean, I'm not saying it's the best platform, but it's not unfair to say it's my favorite, or it's the one that I want to use the most that most people have installed. So, and speaking of software, messaging software, if you didn't notice, if you didn't get the latest, it came out. There was a bit of a flub. It was supposed to release on Halloween, and it ended up releasing at like 4 a.m. on today, I guess, technically, right? Because yesterday was Halloween. Yeah. It ended up releasing and then it listed itself as issue 7, even though inside the email, the Sovereign Tech newsletter email, it said it was issue 8. And anyway, there's a bit of a flub. I'll see what I can do about that. But if you didn't get the latest Sovereign Tech newsletter, then you didn't find out that there is now a full-on Reddit group, actually, that for Sovereign Tech. It's just, what is it? Or it's a subreddit, not Reddit group, but a subreddit, r/Sovereign Tech. And that's already very active. If I think of it, I'll put it in the show notes for this. It'll certainly be in the Sovereign Tech Prime episode show notes from here on out. And we'll see how it goes because, like I said, we're trying to, maybe wean off of Facebook. Of course, there's the Facebook group. People still joining that every day, joining the new Facebook or the Sovereign Tech Uncensored Facebook group, which I'm really honored by that people want to connect on there. That's awesome. And it's very active, and the Reddit is also very active. So I guess we'll see what kind of wins out with all of this. But one suggestion that somebody had, and I just want to address it. Somebody had suggested potentially going with a Discord, with my own Discord server, which, I like Discord fine. I use it often. There's a lot of crypto groups that use Discord. And of course, as a gamer myself, Discord is very commonplace. In fact, there's like some really deep integration that you can do with Patreon and Discord. And now Discord even has video chat. It's not just audio chat anymore. I have no problem with Discord, not really. And in fact, I think they've made some very shrewd business decisions. And they really came out of nowhere, became very popular very fast. I remember it was like maybe a year ago or a little over that, when I first saw it just pop up on PC Gamer, and then suddenly it seemed like everybody was using it. I mean, which is almost weird, but whatever, it's there. Anyway, I have no real problem with Discord. The main thing that in my opinion, you've really got to have like a really great active group around a niche, like Sovereign Tech would be. You got to have the threaded conversations. And the person said they knew it didn't have threaded conversations, but they thought it would be an interesting solution. And I'm not opposed to it. I'm really not opposed to it. I don't know how many people would really want to talk real time. I'm not the best at doing real time because I'm always rocking something, busy, not necessarily whether it's work or with other things, shall we say, whatever. I mean, like threaded is just, in my opinion, it's so key to really make this kind of work and at least work for me. I mean, if Sovereign Tech fans want to set shit up, look, by all means, set it up. As far as I know, the RetroShare community is still really, really rocking. I haven't been able to visit that in a little while. I was all over that, and then what really happened for me was I was doing a lot of traveling, and RetroShare, which is incredible software, very forward-thinking, futuristic software, in my opinion, just such an important thing to really use and have exist. What was happening is that it drains your laptop battery in no time. I mean, you're lucky if you're supposed to get 9-10 hours, you're lucky if you get 2. So I stopped running it pretty much because I seem to be kind of always on the go. It's not that I can't still get on it. I'm still connected with everybody there, and I hook up sometimes, but it's not something I could be on so actively just because of what it does to the battery. Just kills it. So Anyway, that's nothing against RetroShare. Please use it. I love the fact that there's such an active community on there and that people are sharing such amazing things. I mean, that's really so cool. I am not knocking it for anything. It was a use case issue on my part and my part alone. So anyway, let's see. What else do we have here? So Discord. So yeah, Discord, it's interesting, and I don't know, maybe something will come up in the future where it becomes a little bit better of a solution, but it doesn't fit what I'm looking to, be willing to create and help create for Sovereign Tech listeners, So, but thank you. It's a great suggestion. I mean, and like I said, I have no problem with Discord. I think it's fantastic software, all the way around, and I think the business does some really good things. I like the fact that they said, yep, no, we're not going to have Nazis, and they just, started boop, bloop, taking out channels. I mean, you can run your own Discord server, and, then there's not much anybody can do, really. But anyway, I thought, great suggestion. It's just, and people have had other great suggestions as well. Right now, though, it seems to be, it's either like the Facebook group stays or we just end up going, or Reddit, really picks up. But the Reddit group the subreddit is flying high and it's going. So you just, in fact, I put the instructions. You just have to find me on Reddit. B Sovereign is my name on there, and you can message me and I'll get you in because it's a private subreddit, and and I can hook you up. So okay, let's get on to some of our questions. So this was actually asked in the Sovereign Tech Facebook group, and it had to do with a story that I shared in the Sovereign Tech subreddit a couple days previous, and it was let's see, Microsoft engineer installs Google Chrome mid presentation after Edge kept crashing. Okay. So what happened is it was during an Ignite conference, okay, that a guy was a Microsoft presenter, I think Michael Leworthy was his name. He was putting on a demonstration of migrating, applications into Microsoft Azure, which, yep, that's kind of an important thing to be able to do, get people off of the, the AWS teat, and all that, and great, so there you go, Microsoft Azure. What happened is that during the install, and you can watch the video because they uploaded the video of this happening, and kudos to Microsoft, they actually uploaded it, and they kind of let it ride. The guy just says, after a minute, like Microsoft Edge, the Edge browser crashes, and he just says, okay, I'm going to go install Chrome, and he starts installing Google Chrome. And then he continues on with the presentation, and there's some funny moments that happen within it where the presenter, like, there comes when he's installing Chrome. I mean, he's doing all of this right during the conference. And I'll put the link in the show notes if I think about it. And he just, he says something, all right, we're not going to make Google any better. And he unchecks, or he doesn't check the box that says, would you like to send data to Google? And that was funny. And people laughed, and everybody had a really great attitude about it. It wasn't like a Steve Jobs situation where Steve Jobs would have like tossed the laptop or whatever was being used at the time at somebody and would have said, you fucking fix it. No, the guy handled it really, really calmly, made a good joke about it. And, everybody was cool and laughing and everything at a Microsoft event. And fine, whatever. So, but I was asked, had I heard about this and what are my thoughts about it? My thoughts about it, yeah, I mean, we talked about this maybe 2-3 weeks ago on a Wednesday Q&A because somebody asked me, did I think that Edge was ready for prime time? The Microsoft Edge was ready to go. And I had said, yeah, it's almost there. Like, it's getting there, it's almost there. And honestly, just as an experiment, I've actually been using Edge almost exclusively on the ZenBook 3 that I recently acquired. And the main argument, first off, is I really wanted to see more, okay, how does Edge really work when you're really just using that, not when it's just kind of like there and you're kind of in a testing environment with it, which is how I would engage with it in the past, just so I could talk about it as a tech journalist. And so I was like, no, I'll really try this. Let's try using this. And, one of the side benefits is that it's well known, even though as much as they try to fix it, it's well known that Google Chrome on Windows particularly, and kind of, well, not uniquely, because on Mac it can kill the battery by like 50%. It's really terrible. But Chrome is, Chrome kills batteries on laptops. And so, if battery matters, don't use Google Chrome. And as much as they've tried to fix it by slowing down how background tabs are how much they're functioning and all that, it's still really a problem. Of course, I guess if you don't run a ton of tabs, apparently it's fine. But if you do happen to have a ton of tabs open, yeah, it's going to drain. I mean, and Edge will drain more too, the more tabs you have open. I mean, that's just the nature of any browser. That's the nature of tabs in a very real way. So, but regardless, the tests continually come in, and there's been back and forth on this, that actually Chrome does better on battery than Edge. But the bulk of the tests say that, well, Edge, edges out as far as battery life. Like it just has better significantly better battery management and battery life than any other browser on Windows, which it isn't hard to believe because, it's built into the OS. So you would think that it can handle power management a lot better than just some, third-party software put on top. And so I've been testing it and using it. And other than there's little things like Hangouts doesn't work on Edge. I have Opera installed on the machine as well for clients and for other things. But, and if I need to run Hangouts, I can do it that way. But, so yeah, it can't do Hangouts. There was a couple other little things that it couldn't do. I mean, most of the extensions, like Grammarly just came out as one of the extensions for it. You have uBlock Origin. There's the Reddit enhancement suite is available, which I've been using quite a bit recently, of course, now that there's a Sovereign Tech subreddit. All of those things exist on Edge, and LastPass, of course. I mean, a lot of the things that the everyday person needs are actually there. And now that, honestly, today was one of the real death knells for Google Chrome. One of the great arguments for having Google Chrome or Chromium, or, Chrome-based, or maybe like Vivaldi or something, was the fact that you could run the Signal, desktop app on your desktop. But that's not true anymore. That's not a problem. So now I think that really changes just how important and how much, Chrome is going to end up getting used. For a lot of people, not everybody, but for a lot of people, that's very important. So that's going to change things. So Edge, I mean, sometimes there's weird little things that'll happen. Like if you're using Facebook and you try to search for a page on Facebook, it'll come up with, oops, that page doesn't exist, but then you just do it again and it'll come up. And so it runs scripts for some websites in a very weird way. Not that there's anything wrong with the Edge engine. There's not. Okay. But the browser, yeah, it's still kind of finicky. It still does, weird things here and there. And sometimes tabs crash for really no good reason, which is exactly what happened to this Microsoft presenter at Ignite, that ended up installing Google Chrome. But 99% of the time, Edge does exactly what I need it to, and it does it pretty well. It's come that far along. I could easily get away with using Edge pretty much from here on out, other than the Hangouts thing is a problem. But regardless, there you go. So how do I feel about this happening? And is it an insult to Microsoft and all of that? Yeah, I think it looks bad. So I've been reading Satya Nadella's book about the new Microsoft, effectively, and kind of his path into getting there and creating this new corporate culture there. It's called Hit Refresh, and it's actually a tremendous book. I am really, really impressed with a lot of the things that he's saying. I'll do a full review on Sovereign Tech, but he's laying out some pieces of brilliance that would fit very well with the philosophy of Sovereign Tech, all the way. Not a Microsoft fanboy, but just saying. So, yeah, look, Microsoft's a different company. Like these kind of age-old rivalries. They're in many ways they're falling away. And Edge crashing, not a surprise. It's totally believable that would happen and that they'd have to go install Chrome. I thought it was kind of bullshit. Install Firefox. What the hell? But it does really show the mind share that Google Chrome has. But I think that mind share is starting to go away, and it'll be interesting. I think it's November 14th. I just got the email the other day. November 14th is when Firefox 57 comes out. And in the email that Mozilla sent out, they made it very clear. This is an entirely new Firefox that you're getting. Everything is going to change. Everything's different. This is going to be fast. I think they're poised to do something pretty impressive, and they've talked about what extensions you can go to, or not extensions, but add-ons is what they call them on Firefox. You can check out the add-ons that they already have that are compatible with Firefox 57, and it's all the major ones. There's already like 5,000 add-ons that are ready, so they're not going to skip a beat as far as what extensions are available. That's one of the things that held back Edge, was that it had like no extensions when it first came out. I mean, that's one of many things. There's a lot of other things, like you couldn't even like save picture as. There's just a bunch of dumb features that no browser should be without. That Edge had when it first came out, when Windows 10 originally released a couple years ago. So Firefox 57, I mean, like that was the one thing I said about the story. In fact, because I shared it on Twitter too, and I said, like, what, you couldn't install Firefox? What the hell? I will be installing Firefox 57 on this ZenBook when it comes out, because I got to know, I want to see if I can feel that power, but I want to install it raw. I don't want any kind of like legacy code, because this is I know you can run Revo on installer and it'll definitely get rid of everything, but I don't need it right now. And I'm still kind of experimenting what is life with Edge like, so that I can share that with you. So, yeah, but Firefox 57, that's going to be a very interesting thing. I mean, bottom line, again, especially with Signal, something as niche but as powerful and so widely used as like the Signal app, I think that speaks to the fact that, the browser war, and I've said this in recent months on the Prime episodes of Sovereign Tech, I mean, the browser war is still going on. Incredible things are still happening, and it's still very competitive. Firefox, or Mozilla, is definitely upping the game with Firefox. Chrome isn't really, if anything, Chrome's getting rid of features. Sometimes that's a good thing. In this case, I kind of think it's a bad one. In fact, Signal coming out as its own app, they were really trying to beat the clock, because in 2018, we knew this a couple of years ago, that Google said in 2018 they were going to remove apps from Windows, Chrome apps, from not extensions but apps. They were going to remove Chrome apps from Google Chrome come 2018, and they don't even really need Chrome apps anymore, because now with Chrome OS you can just run Android apps on it, so it's not even something that's needed. But yeah, I mean, that would have meant that Signal would have disappeared too. But now that's not a concern. It's a separate app. They've got it out there, and they're already doing auto updates. Of course, they ask you to do them, but great. But yeah, so I think that this is, I think Chrome's mindshare is going to start getting chipped away. I think it will be very interesting to see what happens with Firefox 57 coming November 14th. And Edge, look, like, I want people using open source, install BSD, do all, believe me, in my perfect world, that's what people would be rocking. Okay. But I also want to put out there that, one of my important things that I talk about is account and software minimalism. I mean, if you get a computer and Edge is there, well, fucking use Edge. I mean, like, this really isn't a bad browser at all. In fact, security wise, it's a great browser. For a lot of reasons, more so than some of the others. So, go ahead, use it. But, if Firefox 57 fixes a lot of the flaws that Firefox has had over the years, then, that has to do with memory management, battery usage, things like this, and speed overall. Then, by all means, let's all get back to, let's get back to Firefox and let's rock and roll, because open source, all day, every day, if you can, like, please. So yeah, kind of disappointing that they went with Chrome and they didn't go with Firefox. I think that I don't know what comment to make about that. I mean, kudos, Microsoft. Like, this is almost complimentary of Microsoft, even though it kind of makes fun of their browser. It's almost complimentary in that 5-6 years ago, there would have been, Steve Ballmer, there would have been hell to pay at Microsoft for this, especially if the video got uploaded. They would have been, asking for, takedown notices on YouTube. But no, instead they kind of let it ride. So this just shows that real shift in what Microsoft is as a company today. And it's a very different company. Apple's a very different company. Google is a very different company, but with Google, it's to their detriment. Like with Google, it's a very different, now it's evil. As to where maybe before it wasn't. No, now the company's just straight up fucking evil. So, yeah, I mean, we're dealing with a completely different tech landscape as far as the tech giants go today, because they had to adapt to, consumers. I mean, this is what happened. Look, humanity is not ready for the bulk of the technologies that exist today. That's a fact. I don't think that's opinion. I think that's an absolute fact. And the tech giants, their attitudes, while they were always looking for growth, their attitudes were not, wait a minute, what do we do when we have a populace that really does, like, everybody's using this tech all the time, and you have like server overloads, you have all these different issues. How does that work? And so, I think the tech giants really had to change. They had to be a little agile, which they're not good at. And they had to, look at, not so much become consumer facing, because I don't think they've done that, but they've changed, where there's a lot of consumer centrism and some other things, where things have really shifted. Of course, Google used to be the consumer centric company. Now they're the exact opposite. Now they're absolutely the evil empire. They've taken on like Microsoft's role from the 90s in a very real way. So anyway, yeah, that's that. So it's an interesting story. Like I said, if I think about it, I'll make sure that the link is in the show notes. And we're at about 30 minutes in. So let's see, what is the next question on here? Oh, this is okay. This is one that got asked to me on Reddit. And I asked if I could talk about it on Patreon, because that might be the easiest way to go about it. And we're gonna get into the philosophical here, and we might not be able to get into any more questions because this is kind of a big one. And the question is, so I'm reading it here. I'm a pretty liberty focused individual. I stick up for libertarians on Reddit because they get shit on pretty bad. Many deserve it. And I'm fucking tired of the two-party bullshit. Right on. There was a time when I considered myself an anarchist. However, anarchism on Reddit and many other places on the web are forums filled with violent hate and revolutionary socialist bullshit. I've only listened to your show for a bit less than a year. In that time, you've repeatedly stated that you are an anarchist and also seem to be very much against violence and aggression. Tell me, please, where do I learn more about this? This is much closer to the way I felt years ago before the movement seemed to fill up with entitled bullies. I'll take anything. Podcasts, books, forums are all good. Okay, so right on, man. I can feel so much of what's going on for you. And actually, I don't even know if it might not even be a guy. It could be a woman. Here's a problem. So I guess my version of, how I see anarchism, what anarchism means to me and all this, I've talked about often that I, consider myself, if I have to put some kind of suffix or prefix on it, I consider myself an egoist anarchist, which is the school of Max Stirner, who wrote the book The Ego and Its Own, or the more modern translation, which is The Unique in Its Property. If you run into egoists, it's very few egoists that you'll run into, sadly, that understand some of the quotes that Stirner made where he's talking about, okay, yeah, like, look, there's no rules. Like, there are just no rules. But, there are, even though he wouldn't use the term empathy, he would talk about how, when my brother feels love, I feel love for him. When, he would talk about love quite a bit. And what he's saying there is that, depending on how you read it, and apparently a lot of people just completely miss this quote out of the book, or they don't think about it hard enough. But the bottom line is that, like, if you kill somebody or if you harm somebody, it harms you. That's how I understand, what Stirner is saying. Now, Stirner, the ego in its own, or the unique in its property, whatever, gets interpreted as much as the Bible, pretty much. And, it ironically holds similar titles to, the Bible's often been called the most dangerous book in history. The ego in its own is often called the most dangerous book in history. And so, anyway, that's where the parallels stop, because the Bible's, well, it's the Bible, and the ego in its own is the ultimate reality check, or at least up till now. Here's the problem. Like, the anarchism that I espouse, part of the reason that I feel bad that this is my answer in many ways. part of the reason that I do, or the main reason that I do Sovereign Tech, is because I do not hear my opinions represented anywhere. That's the reason I do it, and I admit that openly. Okay. I don't know what show to go to where people don't look for violent means to whatever kind of ends they may have. There is no show that talks about anarchism, but then really talks about, hey, we're not going to go to, like you said, the revolutionary bullshit and all this stuff, which I just completely disagree with. I think anybody arguing for that just has no concept. Obviously hasn't been in the military. And just has no idea how this, how modern warfare in any way, shape, or form works. They just don't know, because then they know that that's off the table. And also, they would know things, they maybe would have learned from like maybe the works of Gene Sharp from the Albert Einstein Institute that talks about nonviolent resistance, which is, most of the ways that governments topple in the past 100 years has really not been, even though the news may be showing riots and the news may be showing violence and all this stuff, it's really all been happening very quietly in the background, sometimes operated by the CIA or whoever else, but it's always been through genuinely peaceful, either cultural or maybe even political subversion at times. It almost never happens from violence. Like the violent aspects of it, that's just fringe parts of a population. I mean, because like understand, say Czechoslovakia, or, go down the list of a lot of countries where there have been genuine separations from significantly larger powers over the past 100 years. If it really was some kind of bloody battle or riots in the streets and the people finally rising up and saying no more, blah, 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 and they take to the streets with their baseball bats and whatever else, or whatever the fuck, crowbars, I don't know, whatever they're using, or guns, even that. If it was that, there'd be nobody left alive in the country, to rebuild from. But no, somehow things change, and then people just kind of like business moves on. I mean, it may be rough for a few years because you're trying to get your economy and your economic tools, like your monetary systems and everything, into order and all this. But bottom line being is that it usually happens very peacefully underneath, and the violence that you see on the news and in television is all it's actually very fringe. I mean, it may be terrible. I'm not taking away from the tragedy of it. Okay. But it's all very fringe, and it's all meant to kind of like keep this fearful narrative going. I think that, the rest of the world is a bunch of animals and they're all killing each other, and stay in America, don't leave America, blah blah, which just isn't so. Yeah, I mean, that's what people don't realize, is that real revolutions that happen where I don't know that it's real change, because if you're just putting in another government, that's not real change, right? But where governments actually change, where the laws actually change and all this, it all happens very peacefully. And again, either culturally or through some kind of political coup, but it's a full on coup, not like this person gets elected and then they start subverting from their election. No, it's usually like a complete coup. Not a violent one, but it's just one where, you have to understand these concepts. And again, it just goes to show that most libertarians, they've never been in a war. They've never actually dealt with, what's the term I'm looking for? I don't want to say like game theory. I mean, just they've never dealt with actual like foreign policy and all that. They have no concept of how this shit actually works, and how the U.S. military and various defense forces of the U.S. actually does business around the world. Because oftentimes, I mean, depending upon the area, a lot of the little shifts doesn't happen at the butt of the gun. It happens with total, cloak and dagger, all that classic shit, and total subversion. I mean, that's and it's cultural stuff. I was in psychological operations. I know how it works. I mean, a pamphlet does so much more than a gun. Do you understand? And this, it's been that way forever. I mean, what did George Washington say about the Revolutionary War? The Revolutionary War wouldn't have been won without the pen of Paine, meaning of Thomas Paine, that without his pamphlets, that, the war would have been meaningless. And that's the thing. Guns don't win wars. Do you understand? Like, guns don't even really fight the wars. I mean, yeah, they're there, but that's all tragedy, and that's all surface level horse shit. Okay. real change, real things that like, and getting real freedom, or getting away, out of some kind of tyranny. Maybe you just replace it with another tyranny, but actually changing tyrannies, like most of the time, I mean, not always. Yes, like I said, there are some genuinely tragic events that in wars that really get down to that. But most of the time, it's really not violence that makes this stuff go round and round. And you could talk about assassinations and all that stuff. Okay, fine. But when a populace accepts things and it happens en masse, where suddenly like a new country props up out of this sort of stuff, no, that's usually happening very peacefully, and often they're just lying to you about the fact that it happened through war. And I mean, yeah, I'm not saying violence didn't occur, but as far as where the actual change occurred, it didn't happen with violence. It just didn't. And you can read, they have a whole website, the Albert Einstein Institute, where they talk about nonviolent resistance and all that. And they make excellent cases. And look, this is all stuff, I mean, and people it's so funny because when I mention, and because I've been doing this for years, I've been arguing with libertarians and anarcho-capitalists and whoever else, for so long about this stuff, about peaceful solutions and everything, because most of them are just, or not most, many, it seems, or at least the loud ones, they're really ready to go to guns. They're ready to go to revolution. And, I think that's pathetic, but whatever, that's how they feel about it. But I've been arguing them forever. And every time I would bring up, say, Gene Sharp or, a lot of these works on nonviolent resistance and everything, they instantly say, yeah, but that's done by the CIA. And so that means it's bad. No, you dipshit. Yes, it's done by the CIA, but that's because it works for them. like that's how they end up getting, their way in other countries. Now, I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but I am saying that nonviolent resistance absolutely works. One of the things that they talk about often at the Albert Einstein Institute is that you don't, there, just because, say, like, I don't know, let's imagine a country. I don't know, Pteranodon. All right, we'll call that's the country. So an army moves into Pteranodon. Just because an army moves into Pteranodon and say they close down the borders and they claim to have control, does not mean that they have control of the populace. They can't just kill everybody that doesn't comply. And they really don't. You could have within a geographic landmass, you really can have, and this has happened especially in Eastern Europe, in like the Eastern Bloc during when the USSR was starting to crumble and all that. You had full-on countries where you had alternative governments prop up, and people would on the same street, one of them would accept one government and the other would accept the other. And like, you don't, just because there is an oppressive force, just because there's an occupying force, does not mean that they control the populace, does not mean that they are the government. You can have a completely separate one, but nobody seems to understand that. Like, I don't know what's so hard about that concept. Okay, just because there's an occupying force in a geographic landmass does not mean that they control the area. It just doesn't. You can say, well, but that's the nature of occupying. It doesn't matter if they don't comply, and look, they don't want to go around killing. Like, I mean, because otherwise all that's going to be left is an army. I'm just amazed at the complete lack of understanding of even the ugly side of the human condition that so many people have. They just don't know how this shit works. It was amazing. I was listening to the Tatiana show that Tatiana Moroz does, and she had Scott Horton on. I love Scott Horton. Okay, I don't agree with him 100% on everything, but good guy. And super, super knowledgeable dude. And you know what he said on there that I thought was amazing? Because he was talking about the war machine and, the American empire, all that stuff. He's really great at talking about that. And he's like, look, you got to understand. He said the left hates war. And he made it very clear. He said, I'm talking about, the real left, the lefts, the communists, all that. He says, they hate liberals. He says, I'm not talking about progressives. He says, I'm talking about the left. And he meant communists and all that. He said, they hate war. And he's right. They do, but no, most of the times when you talk to libertarians or, even some other, I don't know, ANCAPs or anarchists, or whatever, they're just like, oh, the left, they love war. They're so full of shit. As long as their guy's in power, they're supporting war, blah, blah. No. The real left and even the communists, not the tankies, obviously, but even the communists, they hate war. They all hate war. But people don't know, because they never take the time to actually read up about shit. Now that gets to my larger point, because the person asked, okay, what podcasts are there? What books are there? What forums are there that talk about the anarchism, say, that I espouse? And here's the sad news. Okay, after saying all of that, here's the sad news. It's not there. There isn't any. There aren't any. There's no podcasts. I don't listen to Liberty podcasts. There's a couple that I listen to. I like the work that Roger Paxton does and all that. But I don't listen to a whole lot of podcasts because, frankly, I don't listen to Liberty podcasts, I should say, because they're not talking about what's freedom to me. And they're either talking about, okay, we'll solve it through politics, or, some of these people will come right on and they'll start saying, yeah, eventually it'll turn into revolution. And all of this, and it just drives me nuts. So yeah, I don't know of a podcast that espouses anarchism, that espouses no government, and also not playing in electoral politics. But also says, we're going to do this completely peacefully, and we will refuse to engage in revolution, like violent revolution and all of this. I don't know. I don't know I'd love it if there was a podcast out there that did that, but there isn't. You could say Sovereign Tech is, but I'm really just a tech show. Yeah. Granted, I'm being kind of subversive, and obviously to some degree it worked because, like you said, emailer, that you haven't heard that anywhere else. Well, I am trying to kind of, push out there, my ideals, certainly. I do that consciously or unconsciously. I just know that I'm also, consciously it's also happening, and I admit to it. So yeah, like the ego in its own, there's a way that you can interpret that, I guess I'll say. I think it's the way that it was meant, based upon what I know of, or what we know from Max Stirner, from external accounts, from even from people that don't agree with him. I think that he was a peaceful guy. But a lot of people that call themselves egoists and that read the ego in its own and all that clearly are, they're ready to they have all their memes with AK-47s. They're ready to pick up guns, and they're ready to, take out everybody and anybody. And that's really sad, and they have clearly, or at least in my opinion, they have no concept of what the fuck they just read, when it comes to Max Stirner's work. There is, and this is the thing, this is something I've complained about a lot. And if you've only been listening under a year, some of the more anarchist arguments that I would make over the past 5 years of Sovereign Tech, you might not have heard those. But there needs to be that work that builds on top of what Stirner started. And there's some out there, but none of it is really going all the way. None of it is where I would say, okay, this is anarchism, I have to point at the ego in its own because, depending upon how you want to interpret it, it can be, kind of in many ways the end-all be-all of anarchism. It still has some unfortunate statements in it that were based around the popular science at the time that was, quite frankly, racist. But I don't think I don't think Stirner was racist. I think he was just espousing, again, the science of his day, the high science of his day. So, yeah, there's no podcasts. There really aren't any forums. There aren't any books that cover this sort of thing. If you want to get a foundation in egoism and then just, tell yourself that you're going to go with peaceful means and peaceful means only. And look, I'm not saying that you can't do self-defense. Like, a lot of people get very confused when I talk about this. If I have to, I will. I'm not going to kill anybody, but I will defend myself. And I'm capable. There's nothing wrong with self-defense. I don't think it ever has to go to lethality. There's no reason for it to go to lethality. In my opinion, ever. I think it's a lack of creativity if one thinks so. But whatever, I get it. Some people, that's what they do, and I'm not here to tell you what to do. Okay. But yeah, you just, you take egoism and then you just say, okay, and I'm going to do it peacefully and always peacefully. Then there you go. That's kind of that's how I see anarchism. That's kind of my brand. There might be a couple other ideas I have here and there that I think fall under the elimination of constraint upon the human condition. And I like to use the term constraint specifically, not just laws or mores or norms or anything like that, but all constraint. Any constraint gets in the way of humanity, reaching its full potential. Okay. And now, you can only get rid of those constraints peacefully to really be able to handle a world without constraints. But regardless, I like to use the term constraint. My point being is I like to use the term constraint and not like put an end to laws, put an end to social norms, put an end to this. Just say constraint, and that gets rid of, you know, that says that gets rid of that covers all the bases, right? So yeah, I hear you. I understand. I feel this. I feel like I'm hearing I hear a lot of frustration in your message, or I read a lot of frustration in your message. I share your frustration. That work is not, that body of work is not out there, and I feel bad. And I could have just responded to you with that, but I thought it was such a great question, such a fantastic thing to bring up, that I wanted to do it on a Patreon episode. And I mean, I'll say, you know, the world, not that there's ever going to be a completely anarchist planet. That's just not going to happen ever. Okay. In my opinion. But the world is ready for somebody or for something to put out that message of, we're going to do this peacefully. We really don't need governments anymore. We don't, I mean, like, look, the everyday person, if you ask them to come to like a Liberty hangout, 99% of the Liberty hangouts of some kind that you ask that person to go to, and believe me, I've heard the horror stories I have heard of amazing people that have still kind of, you know, latched on to Liberty ideas, all right? Or not kind of, that have really latched on to Liberty ideas despite the libertarians that they met. I mean, I've heard horror stories where like someone would just come out of nowhere and say to a woman, you know, who just, it would say like, hey, you know, want to go upstairs and I'll eat your pussy? Like, I mean, they just say that. This is a person who never met a libertarian before, and they just come out and say that shit. What the fuck? Right? I mean, that happened. And it wasn't just that one-off. It wasn't a joke. The guy kept on. You know, I mean, like there's and that's one extreme. There's so many other stories where, you know, people are going to one in Atlanta and, you know, going to a meetup in Atlanta, and there's a literal Nazi at a libertarian meetup of like 20 people. One of them's a Nazi. You would hope, well, small enough group, 20 people. Okay, yeah, I imagine everybody's pretty cool. No, you had Nazis there. I mean, these are real stories, okay? And it's really like, but that's the thing, is that I think, in my opinion, okay, libertarianism or anarcho-capitalism is such a hard sell, because as soon as you try to get people to the personal level for it, and you get into like even a smaller group, someone fucking ruins it. Like somebody who thinks that the lack of constraint and the counterculture aspects of anarchism and all this means that they get to just like either be violent, racist, rapey, whatever. I mean, it happens every time, you know, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, you know, part of the problem is that this is a community that says it won't call the cops. So yeah, you're going to get sociopaths, you know, that are going to be very attracted to this. Oh, they won't call the cops. They won't get the authorities involved. Ooh, hoo, hoo. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to call the cops either, but maybe it's not a bad idea to not like announce that so much. I think it's a tough sell. And I know there's people who are working to try and keep libertarianism, you know, and anarcho-capitalism or whatever, you know, keep it fresh, keep it relevant, keep it peaceful, keep it going. And I respect the hell out of those people. And you know who you are, and I love you. And, you know, and I respect what you're doing, but it's, you know, your work's cut out for you. This is a tough sell, because right now it's really bad. In my opinion, there's areas where it's not, you know, I've been to certain areas where things weren't so bad, but then I've been to areas where, holy shit. So yeah, bottom line, like emailer, messenger, I apologize. You know, the work doesn't exist. I think it might be getting worked on by some people out there. But yeah, it's not out there, you know, and I think that's a shame. And especially like if you're a really, really peaceful guy, like you have no idea. Cause I espouse, you know, I'm not saying, I've never, ever, ever said don't engage in self-defense. I've just said that I won't go to lethal force. Okay. I won't do it. And that comes from my own experience of using it. which I've talked about before. But I mean, the arguments, the backlash, the insults, the shunning. It's for people that are supposed to be so open to, to alternative ideas and to alternative ways of living and everything. Boy, I have this old saying from Sovereign Tech years ago. It was like one of the first 20 episodes, and I named the episode the 4 Gs. And the entire point that I made in that episode was that in libertarianism and ANCAPism, there are 4 Gs that you can't mess with, that you don't talk about. And as long as you don't talk about these, you will be the most popular guy. Of course, you'll sound like everybody else, and you won't really be an individual, but you'll be a very popular guy. Who knows? They might even put you up for LP president or something. I mean, fuck, I don't know. Okay, the 4 Gs are: you don't talk about gender, you don't talk about God, or don't make fun of, or don't go into gender bending, don't make fun of God, don't talk bad about guns, and you don't talk bad about gold. Okay, those are the 4 Gs. You don't touch those subjects. You stick to the quote unquote, not libertarian party, but the party line in the abstract of libertarianism and anarchism or ANCAPism, not anarchism. Those are kind of 2 different things. And you'll be just fine. But me, no, I'll buck all 4. I don't give a shit. Yeah, I kind of want to be like, it's cheesy, but I want to like quote out of Fight Club. It's like, you don't know where I've been, Lou. I don't care. You know what I mean? I'll talk about those 4 Gs all fucking day long, right in your face. And, but it's, I mean, yeah, I can be an ass, but if you ever like meet me in person, or like you're in a room with me, like I'm a pretty chill dude. Like I'm usually not an asshole to people unless they start saying something like really, really dumb or abrasive. So, but boy, even if you try to have an intelligent conversation about this stuff, forget it. It's not going to happen. I mean, like they will, they'll do everything shy of chasing you out. It's really rough. So, and I'm not saying every community does that, but plenty of them do. I've had plenty of my experiences, with all of that. So it's a pity. Yeah. I mean, this is very tough. Like in many ways, you're not even really allowed to explore these notions without people jumping down your throat and coming up with all of these insults and whatever else about it, when it's a completely valid choice to go through life with. And I dare say an ethical one. So, yeah. So again, all of that said, those books don't exist, but then that's kind of a market opportunity, right? I mean, like that's a chance for somebody to explore these ideas on their own and perhaps to, write a treatise, write a book, whatever, put out a newsletter. I don't know, that talks about, this kind of anarchism, now, and that's what I was going to say, is that really the world is ready for not a new anarchism, because there are no new anarchisms. Like the ideas have been out there. I mean, like, so like with more pacifist, yeah, real quick. Okay. This is something I wanted to mention earlier. With more pacifist anarchism, like you have the works of Leo Tolstoy, The Kingdom of God is Within You. Was that the book? Or I think that was his book. Like he was an anarchist and he was a pacifist. He was a pacifist anarchist. But also he was like a weird, like quasi-Christian, so not a perfect work by any means. So I mean, there's some, anarcho-pacifism is a thing, and you can look up on that, and maybe in Wikipedia there'd be some resources about it. But again, there's even debates within that. Does pacifism mean that you just don't use lethal force, or does it mean you don't ever like even throw a punch? I fall into the former camp of where I just, I don't believe in the use of lethality. But I firmly believe in self-defense. I mean, so you're going to have arguments there, but I don't know of any, like I don't know of a great work that has to do with, say, like anarcho-pacifism or something like that. And I don't necessarily do, I get called a pacifist, but I don't really identify that way personally. Because again, I will defend, it as needed. I'm just not going to go to lethal force for any reason. So, so to answer your question again, it's no. Oh, okay. So sorry, I'm all over the place. It's late at night. So I was going to say that, yeah, I mean, the world's ready for that kind of anarchism that has because, you saw in the recent shootings and so many of the recent killings and everything that have been going on lately, like, people have had enough. They're tired of violence happening so much. I mean, I think they really are. They ignore a lot of what their own governments do. Certainly, that's painfully obvious. But it seems pretty clear that there's an outcry saying, like, look, we're just done. We want peace, and we know we can have it because most days we do, and this sort of has to stop. And I think that an anarchist message, not a new kind of anarchy. Like I said, there's no new kinds of anarchy, but an anarchist message that concentrates on that, explores those issues in a very real way, and the answer isn't, well, just shoot them back. I think the world's ready for that. I think the world is really ready for a genuine anarchist, or I think much of the world is ready for, again, it's never going to be an entirely anarchist planet, but is ready for a genuine, peaceful anarchist evolution. That addresses very real social issues going on and doesn't answer that question with, well, the problem is government. Sure, government is one of the ultimate problems. It's not the only one, though. Religion can be a problem. There's lots of things. Social norms can be problems. All these different forms of constraint, not just laws. There's forms of constraint that are far more far more dangerous to the human being than laws. That can be more dangerous anyway. And yeah, I think if you touch on what actually is concerning people, I think that I think there's a lot of people ready to hear that and are looking for that. And I'm kind of getting the sense you're sort of one of them. So but you're already on the track. You get it. You know what you're looking for. You know what you want, and you know what you want to hear and everything. And so maybe start doing some of the exploration. And going down that and thinking this stuff through. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm honored that you asked me about this and that you brought it up, and I'm glad to know that you are out there. And then, of course, I'm glad for all the Sovereign Tech listeners and the Sovereign Tech patrons. You keep this ship going round and round. I mean, we have great sponsors too. That I'm really honored by, people that, in fact, I'm going to have the guy. I'm going to have Rav Giglione of Zencash. He is also ex-military, and I don't know if we'll get into that too much in our conversation, but I'm sure he is also well aware of much of what I described. And maybe that'll come up in the conversation. But that's another great thing too, is that, and that's something that's always very hopeful for me, is that the sponsors, the patrons and the sponsors, they are, whether they agree with me or not or whatever, they see the importance of this message that, like this person that emailed in, for this Patreon episode, this person that emailed, said, wait, I'm not hearing this anywhere else. And I'm so honored that all of you recognize that. Again, you don't have to agree with me. I never said everybody has to agree with me. And I tell my sponsors point blank, I will not, tone down my message. I will not leave things untouched. I will not, I'm not going to do anything to make you look good. If something I want to talk about directly affects you and maybe might somehow make you look bad or something like that, guess what? It's going to happen. And that is made abundantly clear with them. And I've never necessarily put it in writing, but, I have that conversation. But most of the sponsors end up, are often listeners anyway, and so they know the score. They wouldn't even want to try to control me, or tell me what to do, because other times, with some of the things that I do on the show, a lot of other podcasts would probably lose all of their sponsors, and then that just thankfully that doesn't happen with Sovereign Tech. So anyway, and hey, if you're exploring this, and if you find something like that I don't know about, let me know. As far as this really peaceful version of anarchism that this person's looking for, let me know. And maybe I didn't know about it, or maybe I forgot about it or something, and we can get it out there. I'm happy to highlight it. And I know other people who would love to highlight it on their websites. And so, yeah, let's make this happen. So, and some of this, I'm actually, the user podcast, real quick. I'm gonna wrap this up. The user podcast, which I've announced months ago and I've been working on for some time. I kind of want the user podcast. The reason why it's always being delayed and late is because I'm really shooting for a degree of perfection here, because I want this to be kind of a corpus, a body, a reference work that people can look to that describe some of the ideas that I talk about that aren't necessarily unique to me, but that don't get a whole lot of, that don't have, say, podcasts, books, or forums or whatever like this person's looking for. That's something I'm shooting for with users. So I appreciate everybody's patience with that, but that is something that I'm working really, really hard on to make it like that solid, to where I feel like it could enter just about any ideological or argumentative arena. So, okay, that's it for this week. I had another question, but we won't be able to get into that this week. So, but a couple of great ones, or a few different topics that are really cool to get into. So, of course, there'll actually be episodes coming out pretty much every day this week. I also have there will be another Relationship Rhombus show coming out very soon, and we got a lot of great stuff just for the patrons. So I will see you, on the other side.